on, guys? We're here with another Review the Review, and today we are covering episode 1 of Game of Thrones House of the Dragon, which premiered last night, and I got to see that as it came out. So, since it's so fresh, we're going to be just doing IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, but initial, um, personal opinion on it, I went in very hesitant because of season 8 of Game of Thrones. I decided to give it a chance because it's as big of a flop as season 8 was. It was still like a first offense, kind of. You know what I mean? So this was their chance to start to redeem the Game of Thrones kind of TV franchise. Whereas the books are always gonna be there and stand on their own. This is their chance to hopefully have learned their lesson from Game of Thrones season 8 and do everything better again, like Game of Thrones originally was. Um, but I do think that they're going to miss a large portion of the audience because of Game of Thrones season 8. Like, I know people who just don't want to watch this because of how badly they were burned. And I have one friend who said maybe he'll check it out like in a year from now when, or a couple years from now when the whole show is out, and he'll just binge watch it and enough time will have passed. But let's dive into some of these reviews. So, IMDb rating, we've got mostly tens. We've got a couple ones, but like I said in a previous episode, tens and ones, you always have to take them with a grain of salt because tens can be people who are just overhyping it, and then ones are usually people who are just trashing on it, and they're like, oh, it's just a one. Like a lot of these can be like 833 votes for a 1 star rating. A lot of these can just be people who are still mad about season 8 that they're not going to give this show a very fair chance. Which is, you know, it is what it is. But let's go back to the main page. So we've got, some of these most recent. Oh yeah, so here's kind of the layout of how the season is going to go. And for those of you who read the books, you pretty much already know this, but around 3 to 5. I don't remember which one specifically, but around here there's going to be a time jump, unless they do it earlier. But like around here, there's going to be a time jump that skips ahead into the future. Not like crazy far, but enough that a lot of or not a lot, but some of the characters are recasted to be older versions of themselves. Like Rhaenyra is the actress playing Rhaenyra right now is not the actress who's going to be playing Rhaenyra later on, because she's playing the younger version of Rhaenyra. But this is going to be 10 episodes, which is a decent amount. And here we have episode 1. So let's go to critic reviews first, and we'll just see. I usually don't care too much for critic reviews, but Return to King's Landing. The series will mainly take place in King's Landing and Dragonstone. True. Which, yeah, that's another thing is they try to. Yeah, I'm actually not going to do critic reviews because I'm going to end up talking too much. But they do oh boy, did not mean to do that. There's a lot of hints in this episode towards Game of Thrones proper. Like a lot of moments that are kind of, you could tell, are put in there. Certain dialogue choices, certain scenes that are specifically for the Game of Thrones fans who are not like book fans, but they were fans of the show, to kind of be like, hey, like, remember this show that you used to love? Like, haha, like a little tip of the hat to Game of Thrones, which I think is a bold move, considering how season 8 played out. I think a lot of people don't want to be reminded of that at all, and it's obviously a big reason a lot of people are not going to tune into the show is because it takes place mostly in King's Landing, and there's not a lot of familiarities towards like the houses that were the prominent ones in Game of Thrones, like obviously Targaryen, but like the Starks, you're not really going to see a lot of the Starks. You're not going to go to the north unless they change that. You're not going to go to the wall unless they change that and they put something in. But here we have a 9 out of 10 saying a strong start after the absolute mad dash final season of Game of Thrones. I was a bit skeptical with the show. After watching the first episode, I can say that my fear is gone and expectations are raised. I disagree with that the fear is gone. It's only episode 1, and I'll wait until the final credits roll on the final episode before I can say if the fear deservedly is gone or not. That's just me. But expectations, I think, are raised. I think they set up a really good narrative. It's now just about delivery. Nice start to an opening series. Definitely had my attention from beginning to the end. Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. This episode laid down a great foundation for episodes to come. It did lay down a pretty good foundation. Has potential to surpass. I disagree with that. It'll never. No. I disagree with the potential to surpass Game of Thrones because of the time period. For those of you who read the books, you know, like, this is a story that's based on a false history. It's a book that the only information you get is from the perspective of an unreliable narrator who searches out 3 other unreliable narrators to tell this story and like try to learn what happened. And at no point in any of the in the book material is there a definitive this is what happened. The only definitives you get are what the unreliable narrator says happened. And the premise and like the backstory for it is an interesting time period. Like, it's the Targaryen Civil War. Obviously, like, dragons, everyone thinks dragons are cool, but Game of Thrones proper had so much more to offer, even if they didn't capitalize on all of it properly. But, you know, everything from the political intrigue to the White Walkers, right? You had so much going on. I don't think this has the potential to surpass Game of Thrones. I think the only projects in this universe that could surpass Game of Thrones is maybe Aegon's Conquest, but Robert's Rebellion. I think if we had a Robert's Rebellion show, that could have the potential to surpass Game of Thrones. The premiere of House of the Dragon was stunning in cinematography while also keeping the same energy as Game of Thrones. Overall, the show will definitely make amends for the devastating goodbye. I can't wait for this new adventure. It's only just begun. I hope this is true. I'm not going to say I agree with that yet because I'm going to be hesitant. So we have 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10. People are praising this. Let's see if there are any poor reviews. I want to see if somebody gave it a low rating. Wow, people are... Okay, we have a 5. Okay, so the only cool thing in this first episode was the dragons and the armor. Story-wise, it's average, nothing to impress. Character lines, again, boring. Okay, I can see where he's coming from. Basically, we have an entire hour dedicated to bashing agnatic with things that happen for no reason, like suddenly gathering people and punishing them, but no explanation. Well, they did explain that. But no explaining how they did know these people were criminals. Yeah. I mean, there are ways around that, like having a registry of people who were already like apprehended for crimes and then just going to their homes and rounding them up. If anybody had like warrants for an arrest, going there, rounding them up. But I can see the point of like, yeah, they didn't show anything. You'd have to make up a reason in your head as to how, Yeah, okay, that's fair. I understand the need of people to feel the same joy as they watched the initial season of Game of Thrones, but that was based on excellent writing of GRM. Again, the acting is average overall, but considering the script, they didn't have much to work with. We will see if things pick up, but the vibe it gives tells me it will not. It doesn't have the creative and disciplined energy to do it. The acting, I don't know if the acting is average overall. I think the moments that we're starting out with are just very tame moments. I mean, well, obviously, except for a couple major scenes that I actually thought were acted very, very well, like the birth of Viserys' son. Um, I don't want to give direct spoilers, but for the people who did watch it already, that was the dude, the, the actress who plays the queen. She nailed that scene. That was her acting was impeccable there. Um, but I'm not seeing a lot of low reviews overall. I want to try to see if there's. Okay, here's something that I know a lot of people are gonna bring up online, and I feel like this. All right, so let's see. Some of the CGI is very questionable at best, but it's not big deal. I like the atmosphere and television is very similar to Game of Thrones. Notice how they Arlen is going with women good, men bad theme. Okay, here's one of the things with George R. R. Martin is he will write a character that intentionally is like this. He'll write a female character who intentionally is like sees herself like this, but he is so great at um like gray area writing where he'll do that on purpose and then she will go on to be a terrible person too. And she might not see it. But like the fans will go like, "Oh, she has this in her head, this kind of theme in her head, but she's also a terrible person." All of the men are violent, stupid idiots. This is not true because most of the men that we've seen so far haven't done anything violent or stupid. While all of the women are smart, stunning, and brave. I knew that the whole male-female air thing is a very good background for modern writers to add a bunch of feminist stuff to it, but I didn't know that they'd literally make up some events just to further prove their point that men are incompetent idiots, straight up evil, and this is just the first episode. I can't say I'm surprised they did announce this in the marketing materials, but it still hurts me to watch another thing that could have been so good and to see the story ruined again. I think this is a bit far, only because there definitely are projects coming out in Hollywood where social and political points are pushed to the forefront and not good story or like coherent writing. But this is a story where it is a point in the book. So it was already established in the book that like this is the reality of their world. Like they have Rhaenyra is named heir, and it's there's never been a female on the throne before. Now he obviously it is a very good background for modern writers to add a bunch of stuff to it, but they do kind of hit you over the head with it a little too much, but not to the point where I actually thought it was too much of a problem. It was just one of those things where it's like, okay, you mentioned that 3 times already. We don't need to rehash it over and over again. But they definitely tried a little too hard just to nail that point home. Um, but yeah, on here, okay, we have nothing enjoyable from in Song of Ice and Fire. Fanatic, as the director didn't learn his lesson from Game of Thrones, having pitch black battle scenes. This is the same in its 2 minutes of action. It was so dark you couldn't see. Oh, there's other action, but the other action during the daytime, they just do too much cutting. It's too much like cut between every movement, so you can't fully see what's happening. You're just kind of stuck waiting for like the short moments where you see one guy on the ground and then like cut, next guy on the ground. And I think that's pretty poor. But I know choreography is just hard to do. So this is pretty good. the audience is giving it a bit higher than the average tomato meter, but let's check out some of these reviews. Starting off with a half a star. Boring, not in the league of Game of Thrones. I mean, yeah, but you're not going to have something that's in the league of Game of Thrones like early on there. Good start for an interesting story setting. Yeah, we saw that kind of review already. Man, it's crazy how much this blows Witcher and Wheel of Time out of the water with its casting, costumes actually look worn in, and fantastic pacing and writing. I'm looking forward to the rest of the season and hope Lord of the Rings continues the trend. That's a whole different topic. HBO just does television in a way that Netflix and Amazon can't. I do agree with that. HBO does really well with scripted television. Obviously, minus a couple hiccups and Game of Thrones Season 8, but for the most part, scripted television's kind of their shtick. I was close to panning it, but it became more interesting near the end, so I'll give it another look next Sunday. Okay, that's a good point. The beginning felt overly produced. It felt like you can tell that a boardroom of executives said how the like beginning of the show needs to go, and it just looks produced, but then as the episode continues on, it picks up its own rhythm and its own kind of feel, and you start to settle into it better. But the beginning is definitely produced. Like clearly, there was out of touch boardroom executives that were like, "This is what you need to do." Absolutely disappointed. The CGI and green screen effects were some of the worst I have seen to date, almost comparable to Sharknado. I feel as if the franchise has been ruined by HBO. They really let people down. CGI in the entire industry of Hollywood right now is kind of messed up because of things like Marvel. You know, some of you might not know, but there's been CGI artists speaking out against Marvel for unrealistic deadlines and terrible working conditions, and making them work overtime after overtime like every single day just to meet deadlines because they just want to pump out Marvel shows and Marvel projects, and that is trickling into other places as well, where these companies that the artists work for get hired obviously by different studios, and then when you have deadline after deadline that's unrealistic, you have artists having to work so much harder in a shorter period of time. You're not going to get better CGI. You're just going to get content, which is like what She-Hulk is dealing with right now, is the repercussions of their own greed of wanting these shows to come out so fast that they don't give the artist time to actually do a good job. Good, but can be better. Only first episodes, so let's see. Game of Thrones episodes enveloped you into its world. You really felt like you were there. How? With captivating characters, not one, not two, all of them. The ambiance, maybe falling snow, winter is coming, or maybe sunny Westeros, you could feel it. House of Dragons, not there yet. It should mark its own path. That kind of ties back to what I was saying before about they kept mentioning Game of Thrones things, and I feel like they should just pull away from that completely and let the show breathe on its own. The word dragons in the title, right? So put some focus on the dragons. Well, hey, the word dragon is in the title because the Targaryens are the house of the dragon. But I get what you're saying. But it's about the Targaryens. Give them more capabilities. Hint, memories of their ancestors are passed down through generations. How would the House of the Dragon use that? Let's hope this does not end up as Game of Thrones. I mean, I don't want to give too many like deep spoilers, but there's a scene where Viserys is talking to Rhaenyra and says straight up that like the dragons are a power that man should never have messed with, and that it's an illusion to think that they control the dragons, which I think is setting up for a point later on about how the dragons like follow command, but they are not actually like they are capable of so much more that they just don't allow themselves to use too much. Because he says pretty sure it's the exact quote. He says he's talking about like the people of Westeros who they fear the Targaryens because of the illusion that they control the dragons, and he says that it's just an illusion and that it's not, like they don't really control the dragons. And he said that that's an important distinction for a Targaryen leader to know. Basically telling Rhaenyra, like, you need to know the truth about this stuff. It's very interesting and well adapted from the book. And they're not scared to show the dragons, and that is a very good sign. The dragons did look cool. I liked the CGI of the dragons. They look a bit better than Game of Thrones. This is every bit as bad as you would expect. Rotten Tomatoes is going to have a lot of work deleting all the negative comments. See, this is one of those ones I said earlier that you have to take with a grain of salt. He gave it a half a star review, as low as he was allowed to go, but then gave no reason for it. Just says Rotten Tomatoes is going to have a lot of work deleting all the negative comments. This is one of those people who every single thing that comes out now, he's going to hate on it. And the fact that he gave it such a low review but no actual explanation tells me that this is not a genuine half-star review. This is just a hate post on it, and then a hate post on Rotten Tomatoes, which they do delete negative comments on things, but they're not the only ones. I didn't know what to expect, but I was pleasantly surprised. It was refreshing. I liked it and can't wait for the rest. So for the most part, everyone is praising it. Okay, here's one that actually has some meat to it. Worst prequel ever, right up there with Star Wars prequels. Well, now you lost me. Game of Thrones was an amazing series, and the prequel would need to be creative. This also is not a prequel to Game of Thrones. A prequel to Game of Thrones would be Robert's Rebellion. This is just way back in time. Like over 170 years back in time. But it's not an actual prequel to Game of Thrones. This doesn't do any of those. The story's boring. Don't fully agree with that. There is interesting things. They're setting up for the Civil War. King of the Mountain was with a smaller circle of antagonists. Game of Thrones had an amazing collection of rival families. This one is few within the same house. It's gonna get worse. They're starting out with the point that, like, right now, like, Viserys as king is kind of like during Robert's reign, where, I mean, he's more hands-on than Robert was, but the point is that right now it's a time of prosperity and peace. So there's no wars, there's no reason for anyone to be riled up or anything. So, like, family rivalries are at a minimum because of the fact that everything is going as good as it possibly can in Westeros. And Westeros is a shitty place to begin with, but this is not, like, the rival families. That's going to get worse and worse as the Civil War starts to, like, come to fruition. The costumes and set sucked. The set was a bit weird. The set was a bit off. The costumes, for the most part, I thought they were good, though. Some of the hair and the wigs were a bit, like, you could tell how much of a wig it was. So out of tune, it ruined the suspension of disbelief. The acting was awful. I don't think the acting was awful. The characters felt forced, scripted, and no life outside of read this line. There were a few moments that were a bit, like, clearly too scripted. But nothing, like, crazy bad. My cat exudes more emotion than this sad lot. Oh, God. They kept adding in CGI dragons for the sake of showing CGI dragons. Game of Thrones did it better. If I need a sleeping aid, I will watch this. Otherwise, it's a hard pass. Sad HBO. Fire everyone. Pull it and redo it. Save the franchise. It's that bad. So this one, at least, he gave it as low as he could to hate post on it. I never, like, this isn't anything against this guy personally, but anytime people give it the lowest, I always just assume it's not like that. It's just a hate post. Because for something to be actually this bad, because for me, I'd put it at about a 3 or a 4 star, like a 3.5 star, if I was to rate it. Because I don't think it was great, but it was good enough to set up the story. Well, yeah, good enough to set up the story for me to want to see what they do next. But the ending here, like the last part of his post, gives me the impression that this is mostly an emotional hate post and not an actual well thought out critique. Which, I mean, most people treat everything like Twitter. So you just spew from your mouth and you don't think about it first and then you just post. Oh, wow, that's long. Okay. The series is off to a strong start. Let's see. The truth is that the best, most exciting, and funny moments of the episode are the bloodiest and most violent parts. Whatever the visual level of Game of Thrones is greatness. The episode is full of wide beauty shots and is crowded and full of people and layers and creative lighting. They don't have a reference from Game of Thrones series. Wait. Their look and everything from them. They don't have a reference from Game of Thrones. The series decided to summarize the details in the beginning of the conflict in the first episode. It sounds great at the first time, but here comes the problem. Unfortunately, anyone who has seen the trailers can expect the end of the episode from the first 10 minutes of it and is able to anticipate its chapters. Unfortunately, the campaign was not successful. I mean, anybody who read the books knows what to anticipate, so that's not too much of a solid point because it's just like the Harry Potter movies. Like, when Harry Potter movies were coming out, everybody who read the books already knew what to expect. It's just the excitement of how do they actually portray it in live action, not so much what specifically happens. Because we know what specific... Well, I mean, again, it's false narrators, but we know what the book tells us happened. It reminds us of Hamlet and the Lion King and the Northman with different details, but I mean the story of the family conflict and the uncle's greed and the boy's role. I think the makers noticed that, so they concluded early, but there is a voice in my head that tells me this increases the challenge more because there's nothing else you can expect from watching the trailers, but we will see. It's promising, exciting, funny, got up points of power like rhythm, cinematography. By introducing the derivative series that you were forced to reconcile with your audience with it, or are you going to bury all that has passed due to commercial ambitions? Okay, so the end here of his post, I can kind of see where he's going with it. They obviously had a lot of meetings about where to go next after the failure of Game of Thrones season 8, and they had three choices really. They had they had four choices that they had to think very long and hard about. Redo season 8, which they would never do because that admits failure, and just like with like Lucasfilm and everything, you can't it's never the studio's fault. Never. Like you can't admit that you guys did it wrong. You can do no wrong. So that was off the table. So then that left them with three options. Spin-off series about what happens next, which there's the rumor now that there's a Jon Snow spin-off series. But I think if season 8 landed perfectly with the audience and like, or at least good, like even just somewhat good, I think we would have already had a spin-off series of some of these characters. So that one was definitely off the table at the time. Then you have doing prequels, which do Robert's Rebellion, which they definitely talked about, especially since they already had like a young Ned Stark actor and other characters, younger versions of themselves. But I think they probably decided not to do that just because it's too close to Game of Thrones and they probably want to wait for the heat to die down. And I feel like part of this show is kind of a dip the toes back in the water to be like, how do audiences react? But also a chance to win some favor back with the audiences and to be able to do like a Robert's Rebellion. Because if you win, if this show lands it and they win favor back, and then they announce, hey, we're going to do Robert's Rebellion next, or if they even hold off on that and they do, hey, we're going to do Aegon's Conquest, or even just a show about the rise of the White Walkers, and it's just like, the Starks having to build the wall at the north and all that stuff, and they nail that too, it would win back so much favor with the audience that they could do a Robert's Rebellion and nobody would really be like, I don't really want them to mess this up because then you had like back to back redemption series, and I do believe with this show they had already said that um, I do believe they already did say that this is going to be an anthology. I'd have to double check on that, but I believe it's only going to be like 3 seasons and then move on to the next thing, which I also like because if they keep it short, it's already a pretty short story. Like the book is not extensive. I do know George Martin went back into the book though, and he added a ton of stuff. Like the character, I don't remember his first name, but the Valerian guy. He's the uh, white-haired dreadlock guy who is like kind of quiet for most of this episode, but like um, kind of tries to speak out here and there, and still just doesn't like put his voice out there too much. He is like George wrote him a ton of like context to make him like a super badass character. So he's going to be very, very, very important in the coming episodes, and especially towards the end of the show. But for right now, he's kind of chilling there. He's kind of like not talking too much, kind of people watching, studying, but then like trying to get things done. And the rest of the core is kind of like nothing's that serious right now. Like nothing's really going on. So that'll be interesting. But other than that, I mean, we just kind of have to wait to see episode two. I think once I see episode two, I'll decide if I want to do like just a House of Dragon discussion episode, not just to review the review. But for right now, I don't want to put too much effort and pay too much mind to something that I'm not confident won't burn me, because Game of Thrones season 8 was painful. It was like very painful. But yeah, let us know in the comments what you guys think about this episode and if you agree with any of the reviews that you saw today. Peace out and take care.